Good evening. My story starts in 2002. And it started with an obsession, quite frankly. And it's one that many people who know me find very strange. Because the truth is, I don't do scary. I hate scary things. So I know what each of these represents. I know that the mask is from the movie Scream. I know that the clown in the middle is from the story of Stephen King's It, this one from the remake. And I know that the final picture is from the film The Shining, also by Stephen King. And this is how I watched the previews. Yeah. No, I don't do scary. Except in 2002, I became obsessed. And when I think about this particular scary element, vampires, this is how I feel. I'm so excited. Yes. I love vampires. Kind of. Really and truly, my obsession doesn't make a lot of sense. Because in 2002, most vampires look like this. Who falls in love with that guy? Excellent. But I don't. Now, if I had fallen in love and become obsessed with vampires in 2019, this would make more sense. He's a pretty good looking guy. But the truth is that I didn't actually become obsessed with vampires because of their looks. I became obsessed with vampires because I wanted to know the answer to this question. Why? Why would anyone want to live forever and watch everything they love wither away and die? That makes no sense to me. So in 2002, this obsession begins, and I start looking into any piece of literature I can get my hands on. And the internet wasn't that very well developed, and I grew up in Alaska, so I wasn't very good at navigating technology at this point. But in my obsessive quest, I found Bram Stoker's Dracula. And this book was amazing. I sank my teeth in and I drank the ink off the pages. I could not stop reading and learning about this incredible vampire Dracula and all the other characters that went with it. I couldn't stop. And then the story ended. And it was tragic, because rather than answering my question, I ended up with more questions. I wanted to know, well, do all vampires have these powers? Wait, is Dracula the only vampire out there? And so many more questions that I began to scour the globe. And I looked all over. And what I found was dozens of ancient myths of various types of vampires. I'm going to share 3 of them with you today. The first comes from the Philippines, the aswang. During the day, the aswang shapeshifts into a woman who's very cranky and has very grumpy manner. She's mean to people a lot. Or it shapeshifts into a dog with cloven hooves, or a pig with cat eyes. And then at night, it becomes this vicious demon creature that has a tongue like a mosquito that's hollow, and it pokes into people's veins and drains them of their blood. And that's how it takes advantage of its victims. The next vampire is from Malaysia. This is the Penanggalan. Its name literally means the separator. During the day, it is a body snatcher. It has taken its previous victim and become that person. And then at night, it cuts itself away from its previous victim and then floats through forests and along dark, creepy alleyways. And then it attacks its victim with the trailing intestines and grossness, sucks the blood out of the person, and then takes over their body and lives as that person for another day. The third vampire is a little closer to us here, the Viacolacus. And the Viacolacus is different in that the Viacolacus is closer to the seductor that we are familiar with in our modern vampire lore. The Viacolacus would appear as a very attractive man or woman, seduce its victim, and then drain that victim of all its blood. So, In my research, as I'm looking at all these vampires in ancient culture, I kept coming back to this question: why? Why do these cultures have vampires? What are they trying to explain? Well, they're trying to explain lots of things. They're trying to explain heart disease and respiratory infections and death after childbirth and internal hemorrhaging and flesh-eating bacteria. But because they didn't have science, they had vampires. Which brought me back to where I started with Dracula. Because in Dracula, we have the first evolution not only of the vampire moving from Transylvania into the center of London, but we also have a truce called between science and religion. And science is used to treat the physical side of what Dracula was causing as a vampire, and religion was used to treat the spiritual problems that Dracula was causing as he's feeding on people. So this truce between science and religion was a literary evolution. And then I started thinking about it. Wait, so, there it is. As humans have evolved, our technology has advanced. So vampires, in order to survive, have to evolve as well. Well, in that evolution, Dracula, which was written years ago, time has passed, Dracula evolved, but then what happened next? Well, what happened next actually was found in this particular book. This woman is Anne Rice. She is the author of Interview with the Vampire. She's a prolific writer, and she wrote this particular series in the 90s, and it was the next step in the vampiric evolution. She gave vampires a choice, because at this point, they're being hunted to extinction. And so vampires can now choose to fight their own darkness and no longer drink the blood of humans. And I started thinking, I was like, okay, so if humans are evolving and vampires are evolving, then are they the same thing? Well, when you look at ancient vampire mythology and you look at our present-day modern vampires, the definition does in fact remain the same. A vampire is something that drains the life or joy out of a human being. By that definition, vampires are real. Now, if you're not convinced yet, let me give you a few examples. Where vampires were once physically attacking human beings, we have domestic violence and physical abuse. Where vampires were once tempting people and drawing them in and enslaving them with the idea that they could live forever, they could be wealthy beyond measure, we have addiction to drugs, alcohol, and technology. Where vampires once lured human beings into the darkest, deepest, scariest parts of themselves and brought human beings with them, we have mental illness, depression, and anxiety. So now that we know that vampires are real, what do we do? Well, we once again step back to Bram Stoker's Dracula. Because in Bram Stoker's Dracula, not only do we have the evolving vampire, we also have the vampire slayer, Van Helsing. And Van Helsing has a set of tools using science and religion in one place to defeat the vampire. Van Helsing had stakes, wooden stakes, that stopped vampires from physically accosting human beings. We have self-defense classes. Van Helsing had holy water to cleanse a person from the poison that a vampire injected. We have essential oils, spa days, retreats, where our souls are cleansed and we help each other feel so relaxed. Where Van Helsing created hedges around the victims of vampires so they could recover. We have shelters that, well, they provide shelter and food and other necessities for those who have no other place to go. Where Van Helsing had sunlight to literally burn Dracula out of existence, getting rid of all vampires, we have the love and encouragement of our friends and family and the advice of them and healthcare professionals. So, Now that we know that vampires exist, and we know that there are tools out there, how can you be a slayer? Well, pro tip number 1, be educated. Be educated about the social issues in your area and volunteer to help. Be educated about mental health so that you can recognize the signs in yourself and others. Pro tip number 2, don't be afraid to ask for help. In asking for help and reaching out, people can bring you out of the darkness. Pro tip number 3, believe in something, anything bigger than yourself. Whether it's from religion or science or the goodness of humanity, but believe in something better and bigger. Pro tip number 4, be the voice for people who cannot speak for themselves or who are struggling to speak for themselves. Vampires are real. But if you remember nothing else from this particular TED Talk, please remember that you can be the voice, you can be the light of truth, you can be a slayer. Thank you.